All right, so I had a hankering for the empanadas that I used to have for lunch. Gosh, well, a long time ago, let's say more than a decade, when I used to work in Tribeca. The great thing about teaching yourself how to cook is that eventually you can make the things that you really miss. And so I don't have a recipe. I don't have a recipe for this. I didn't have a recipe for the chocolate gelato either. But at a certain stage, you're able to guess and guesstimate and recreate your the things you really like to eat. And for sure, this is an empanada. Sorry for the jiggling. That is unconventional. It's not a traditional empanada from Argentina. It's not fried, it's baked. And there are going to be two of my favorites. One is a breakfast empanada, but the one I'm making now is a duxelle with cheddar cheese, which is basically minced sauteed mushrooms with minced shallots and wine. And I'm guesstimating, because that restaurant, which was a takeaway in Lower Manhattan near where I used to work, no longer exists, so I'm just going from memory. So I have here 2 ounces of butter. I have my water boiling, and I see that it's about to shut itself off, which is fine. But I really want I'm making basically the equivalent of, or guesstimation of, hot water crust. Hot water crust has been used since the Middle Ages, was very popular in Tudor times for making raised meat pies. In Victorian times, it was used in beautiful molds to raise up you raise it up and then you mold it and fill it with meat. Different meats, layers of meats, eggs, herbs, and so on and so on. Someday I'll make a raised pie, but for that's so much work, and it requires you have an audience, a dinner table full of people wanting to eat it. So I got, basically this would normally be made with lard, and I'm not into lard, and I can't find it anyway. If I wanted to, this is vegetable shortening mixed with butter. And I want to have 4 ounces in total. I don't yet. The butter's for flavor. The shortening is for structure. The whole thing about hot water crust is the structure. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, but these will be baked, not fried empanadas. I still don't have it. That's a lot. That's quite a bit of shortening, so I'm going to add a little butter to make it pretty much equal. There, 4 perfectly. Throw it in the bowl. The water has boiled. I'm going to grab my, sorry folks, small quarters. I'm going to grab we want the measuring cup and pour over, measure 2 cups exactly. It will melt pretty quickly. Boiling water. This is the exact opposite of French pastry. French pastry and most of everything we're used to is made from, comes from the model of blended mix, freezing cold, very cold elements and flash bake them hot. Very cold, very hot. This is, like I said, pre-refrigeration, pre-leavening of any, this is Tudor. Basically, it comes from Tudor times. I'm using it here because I think that the baked empanadas that I had a sturdy crust like this. Can't guarantee it. The place doesn't exist anymore. But look, so it's melting nicely. Because this isn't going to be heated any further, there won't be any, I'm going to use table salt. One. Let's see if it comes out. You know what, you can tell I don't use table salt very often. Okay, 1.5 teaspoons. Okay, there we go. That was a bit less, but I don't really love overly salting food. I feel like you can add salt later if you need to, but this is a crust, not the filling. You can see that this last piece of butter isn't quite getting there, but it will. Let me remove this. Like I said earlier, duxelle is just a fancy word for minced, sauteed mushrooms. It's used really famously in a beef Wellington, or as Pam tells me, Pamela tells me, a salmon Wellington. I've never had the gall to make a salmon Wellington because salmon only takes 5 minutes to cook. Anyway, so I am getting this to the point where it's time to add the 6 cups of flour. And then I'm going to be mixing super furiously with my wooden spoon. Sorry for the delay. This is very light flour because I've just added it to the bowl. That's 1, 2. This should make 36 4-inch circles of dough for the empanadas, but I actually like them to be a little larger. That's 3, right? Who's counting? Someone has to count. 4, 5, and the 6 I'll leave out because I'll be estimating. Oh, yeah, I'll estimate that when it's time to turn it out and knead it. So let's see what's going on the camera. Okay, so I've got my melted shortening, melted butter. Like I said, the butter's for flavor, the shortening's for structure. Quite a bit of salt, but not too much considering how many cups of flour I have going on. 750 grams if you're not using measuring cups. Gosh, it smells just like raw flour. No worries, because this isn't the end. I can see that it's pretty, this is called shaggy. When you're making bread or pastry, shaggy is a stage that you either have to add something or keep mixing. And I don't think this is too shaggy because my hands aren't covered in mixture. But I see there's flour on the bottom. And I think that was 5 cups, right? I don't even know if I need any more. I'll add a little bit. And then the rest will be added on the in the kneading. It will absorb as I knead it. And I can tell I don't really need very much. It's pretty warm. It's quite nicely comforting warm. I'm gonna turn this off. Well, maybe I won't turn it off. You can watch me turn it out and knead it. But as long as you have some patience while I remove some of these items here from my make-believe table bench, kitchen bench. This is for the later stage. This isn't actually what I normally use, and that's too much flour. I do have a bench scraper for this, and that's what bench scrapers are for. This is actually a little bit too small of a surface, but I decided to put it all in one video and not make ellipses while I change out. And I think the dough here is not too large and not too unwieldy. It's still warm, it's quite warm. I can feel there's some lumps in it. I'm going to, can also feel the moisture. I'm going to dust my hands a bit. And I don't know, you've probably seen the TV shows, but what we do, it's not sticking, but I think it will stick. So I'll throw a little bit. I can tell because my fingertips are sticking. Okay, spread it out. Do not leave it in piles. And you do the palm, pull back, palm, pull back, palm. Remember, we're not making a bread, we're making a crust. Oh, see, it's sticking. That's what a scraper's for. And then this. That's almost 6 cups if you've been following. I actually think it's not quite. And I want it to, it will incorporate. It's not necessary to incorporate it. You just don't want it to be wet like a, you don't want it to be wet. Lots of doughs for breads and all kinds of, you know, brioche and so on. You want them to be wet, French bread and so on. And I don't think that's the case for this. It's also not going to rise because it's not yeasted. I just wanted to build out some strength and some gluten, and I'm going to throw it back in here. Dust it around like that so it doesn't stick. And this needs to be refrigerated for 1 hour. I will be put plastic wrap on and close it down on top so that a crust doesn't form. You know, this will dry out pretty quickly and we don't want it dry. That'll cause there to be little dry clumps in your mouth. We don't want that. It's still quite warm and I like that. Very comforting. Anyway, next time I'll be making the duxelles for the filling, and I'll be roasting some bacon off in the oven. Perhaps I'll microwave it. You know, it's the 21st century. Thank you, bye. So I'm going to start the filling while the dough rests in the refrigerator. These are pretty large shallots, and therefore I don't think I need more than one. And they have to be minced. So I'm going to slice them this way. And I'm going to slice them this way. Need a pretty sharp knife for this. I'll be doing the same to the 600 grams of creminis. Except for when it comes to the creminis, I'm going to take the bottoms off because they're tough. And I have my trusty brush. I've already brushed them, but I just want to show you how it goes. And if you want to make jokes about my mushroom brush, go right ahead, because I'll know what you mean. In fact, I'm not beneath joking about mushrooms these days. If the stems are kind of tough like that, don't use them. I also, I have to finish this before I start to cry. I'm not going to add garlic because shallots are from the garlic family. They taste like onions and garlic at the same time. So I'm just going to mince those up. That's not quite done. I'm not finished with the other half. I want to show you something about the other mushrooms I've chosen. So I have, you know, these cook down quite a lot. Oops, let's do this. Use the blade, move forward. Chopping can happen at this stage to get to the minced version. These are all going to cook down, and there will be quite a bit of liquid, and we don't want that in our filling. We're going to cook it all down until all of the liquid has evaporated. Just show you a little. And this is a chop, and this is a mince. Mince. It's probably the only time you really would want to mince any mushroom, because slices are gorgeous in food. And also big chunks are gorgeous in beef bourguignon and stews and all kinds of things. But you have to mince these. I want to show you, before I finish that and waste your time, I want to show you about the shiitakes. I have 100 grams of shiitakes, not 200, my mistake. And the thing about shiitakes is you actually don't really want to eat the stems. They're tough. And I'm making my empanadas with a mixture of creminis for the flavor and the shiitakes because of the flavor. But I'm pretty sure that my $3.99 empanadas down on Grand Street did not include shiitakes. I just thought what does the Contessa say? Turn up the volume. Anyway, it's just how I want it to be. And of course, we don't have to call this duxelle of mushroom. It's just kind of interesting how a lot of, there's been so much, what do you call it, transitional food making over the century, because empanadas are originally Argentinian, but now they're in so many cuisines, and they come in so many forms, and their fillings, in this case, is both a hybrid French and hybrid North American version. You'll see that when I make my favorite breakfast one. As I said at the beginning, I'm not making traditional empanadas. Traditional empanadas might include peppers, onions, and beef, spicy chicken, spiced pork stew, all kinds of reductions of meats with gorgeous vegetables, always onions, most of the time different kinds of peppers. See, this is what you want in a dice. Anyway, it's pretty much, I don't know, somehow it's easier to do a fine dice of shiitake because they're quite firm. Also, these are very fresh, and I'll be doing this for quite a while, and therefore I'll be turning the video camera off until I'm ready to saute them with butter, olive oil, the shallots, and with a little deglazing of white wine. These aren't everybody's empanadas. They're just the ones I want, that I want to eat. That's the amazing thing about cooking. Make what you want to eat. Okay, so I've diced the shiitakes and the creminis, small dice. I guess one might consider that minced. It's not really minced, it's small dice. And then this is the ratio of one shallot. I added almost a second shallot, almost all of one because they were large, could have been two. Also small dice, just see it's the same size. Turn the pan on to medium-high, and I'm going to, well, 2 tablespoons of butter. I also noted that my stems were tough, so I didn't use most of them. But that's all I have left from the 600 grams of creminis, and I used all the shiitakes. And remember, these are going to saute down. My pan is rather small, but that's because I know that this will reduce quite a bit. And I won't waste your time by showing you the entire process, just the beginning. I'm also going to add some olive oil here. That's because we want the flavor from the butter, but we don't want the butter to burn over this, the length of the cooking. It'll happen shortly. I'm removing the rest that I didn't use. Remember, I wanted to make 2 types of empanadas. It's getting late, so I'll probably reserve half the dough and make the breakfast ones tomorrow night. These are the duxelles. And while they cook, once I get them in there, I just want it to be hot enough. There's no point in letting them soak in fat, butter fat or olive oil fat, if they're not going to actually cook. I don't want it sizzling. I think most of us know how to cook mushrooms, right? Anyway. It's going to take 10 or 15 minutes. the meantime, I'll get my wooden spoon back when I find it. But I want to hear a little sizzling first. Want to hear a little sizzling. Oh, look. I didn't make, you can tell I didn't use too much butter. It's almost a dry pan. That's good. That's very good. I hear the sizzling. At some point, I'll flip it, but not right now. One of the real important, well, something to know about is that seasoning with the kosher salt doesn't just flavor it and bring out the flavors, which is the most important. It also draws out, I don't want to overdo that just because I'm talking. It also draws out the moisture of onions especially, but in this case, I think I might need a little oil there. It is sticking a bit. It's extra virgin olive oil, of course. Pepper doesn't need to go in at the beginning, but this isn't going to be take a long time. So I'm going to add the pepper. Now, if you're doing other kinds of cooking, like braising, the pepper actually does have a capacity to turn, meaning get rancid. So you don't really need, you shouldn't really put it in if you're cooking something for an hour or 2 hours. This is gonna be 10 or 15 minutes. The salt will do its work. Same thing for pepper. The same question for pepper, the same approach applies to herbs. If you had access to fresh flat leaf parsley, which is the best, my garden is gone now. You would chop the parsley and add it at the end, and you would have a true duxelle of, which is the Belgian or French way of saying, I just sauteed mushrooms with shallots. What's going to keep it from burning is a couple tablespoons of white burgundy. It's going to add a flavor that will be in the background at the end. That's just a white wine. White burgundy is usually a Sauvignon Blanc mix blend. Well, I don't have to turn that up. It's pretty high, but I'm adding the thyme now because the thyme needs to, thyme, oh, by the way, is sauteed mushroom's best friend. If you're making a trou duxelle of mushroom for your beef Wellington or to slather it on bread, crostini, baguette, you would do. See how the wine is mixing with the, okay, I'm trying to flip it, okay. Mixing with the released water from the lovely mushrooms and shallots. I'm adding these now because these leaves, these tiny leaves, are just going to add a little flavor to the sauce before it's dried up, before the sauce evaporates. I want it to be incorporated into the meat of the mushrooms and, of course, the flavor of the shallots will incorporate. But that's not really how you use one would use parsley. Parsley is a brightening flavor, and when it's cooked down, it becomes flavorless and soggy. But woody herbs like thyme and rosemary really love to be roasted. That's why we roast vegetables with potatoes, with thyme, but do not, I'm turning it down now, but we don't really, and then we roast potatoes, chickens with, and turkeys with thyme inside or outside, or thyme butter under the skin, but we don't roast them with parsley. So it's two different types of herb, woody or not woody, and they're used differently. Basil is also one of those more leafy vegetables, leafy herbs like flat leaf parsley, which you will always put in the end because they become aromatic just as you take everything off the heat. I'm seeing only a little bit of fluid here. See how much it's cooked down? I don't think I'll even get 18 empanadas out of that, but that's okay. I'll just use what I have. And the next time I see you, I will be doing, this will have been dried out down to, well, it's almost there. Remember, it's going to bake in the empanadas. We just want the liquid dried out. We will, next time I'll have the sharp cheddar, also known as old. It used to be called sharp when I grew up. Now it's called old. I got some old cheddar, and I'm recreating the cheddar and mushroom empanadas that I still dream of from all those years ago, which was in fact 22 years ago. Well, it's more than that. Don't tell anyone. I can hardly believe it. Anyway, see you soon. Okay, so I have a couple things going on here for the final pre-bake stage. I have my chilled dough, and you can see it's beautiful and smooth. I'm just crimping it at the bottom because I'm used to doing that. And I'm going to use my bench scraper to cut it in half because, oh, I'm sorry, I'm bumping the camera. Tight quarters, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I'm gonna cut it in half because I'm using the other half for the breakfast empanadas, which I'll make tomorrow night. And this piece I'll wrap and put back in the refrigerator. I see there's a little green, not that little pieces of thyme in your dough is a problem, but it just doesn't look good on camera. And I got some shallots, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so what we're gonna do is flatten it out and cut it into eighths. 1, 2, 3. So that's 2. That's 4. That's 6. And that's 8. And these make little balls. I'm going to be rolling them, so it's just a habit for me to roll them to ball them like that, because that's how you make dinner rolls with yeasted dough. This is not yeasted dough. These might be too large, and I might have to, you know what? The recipe doesn't call for them to be that large, so I'm going to make them into 16 pieces, as equal as you can get it. I'm gonna roll these out. I can see how unequal they are, but I'll be able to judge. The other factor is that I'm not making 4-inch rounds. I'm making them larger than that because I want to do a special crimping. The crimping that was visible. And that's why I'm going to divide this in half and out at the other balls. I'm adding this because I know that I want them to be equal, but I don't need there to be 16 because I'm making larger empanadas, slightly larger, just so that I can crimp them properly. And I'm using my eyes and a little bit of experience to do this. I may note that I have my duxelle, which is fancy French, probably Belgian term for chopped sauteed mushrooms, shiitakes and caminis with a little thyme and white wine and shallots. You can see how that just completely cooked down. It used to be heaping, remember? And I shredded my sharp cheddar cheese. I would use extra sharp, but our extra sharp, the one that we have here, isn't orange. And I would like to see it. So that's why I'm using that kind. It's interesting that the marketers here found that English people no longer understand the word sharp. In fact, cheddar is English and it's very Canadian, very much Wisconsin. But in French it's still strong. But in English it's old. Womp, womp, womp. Anyway, it's made with Canadian milk, which has no hormones. Hasn't since the late 80s. So that's good. And I'm going to use this 4.5-inch ring because I want things to look good. Okay, so we're going to throw this, we're going to put this all close together under a towel and roll them out one by one. We're going to make this one by one. I haven't floured the surface. That's why I'm moving them like that. I want to flour the surface and I want to put, I don't want them to dry out. So I'll put a towel over. I can see duxelle, pieces of shallot, and leaves of thyme. Not that I'm really worried about nice things like that. So I gotta have my frozen rolling pin. Voila. It's actually a little frozen on the outside. I don't really want that. That was not intentional. Okay, and then I want, what else am I looking for? Flour, yeah. Just dust my area here. Move these along, moving right along. I just found my spatula, also known as a palette knife. It's not really a spatula. I don't have a word for it. In the jar of flour. I'm glad I looked. Okay, so we're gonna take these balls of dough. There's some mushrooms, put them back. And we're just gonna, so remember this is hot crust dough. It's gonna wanna spring back. And so I'm going to just pound it out a bit. Well, it's very soft. You just need to know that the harder you push, it's an equal and opposite reaction, so it wants to spring back. I'm going to show you one of these, and then I'll be doing all the others off camera because that's going to be boring. Just push it out a bit. I don't need more flour. It's pretty nice. Of course, I've got pieces of leaves of thyme. Just going to push it out as much as I can, making a circle. And then excuse that. Look, I flipped it over by accident. Okay. Just a moment here. That's the wrong size. Oh, this is what I'm looking for. Okay. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's close enough. I'm just gonna help it with the sharp knife. I'm going to throw that onto a sheet pan. I said I would do only one, but I think that I'll do another one. Just the pan. I mean, just the pin, pan, flim flam. Okay, I'm gonna roll this one out, keep those under. Oh, in the meantime, I have to cover the one I just made. I guess I've said it, I've mentioned a few times that I'm just making something from the way I remember tasting. I don't have the recipe for that lovely shop, and I know there are many gorgeous empanadas shops in New York City, but I want this. Like I said, I have a hankering. Anyway, so that's pretty beautiful. That fits perfectly. Chop. Take the sharp knife just in case. And that's a 4.5 inch diameter, which is 1.5 inch in diameter larger than this dough recipe calls for 36 empanadas, and that's because I want to do the crimping the way I had it. I'll be right back for the rest, okay? So this is the last one of 12, which makes a lot of sense because they're a little bigger than the 16. And I still have quite a bit of filling and a lot of cheese, but the cheese is going to be for work as well for my breakfast empanada. I just wanted to show you what I've been doing. I decided to go for the rope method of sealing. I tried the crimp method, but I don't trust that it won't leak, and the ones I always had the rope method, which makes a nice kind of crunchy part to go with the filling. I wish, I would eat this filling without any pastry. It's so good. The mushrooms, I mean, the cheese just makes it quite kind of North American. So I'm going to try to show you the rope method. Turn it around. I turn it on its side and then twist all the way around. And it's pretty important, see, to put the ends under. For some reason that's a little smaller than they usually are, but that's the rope method. It's a little cheese there, I'm not worried about it. I'll put it on the pan, give it a wash, and I think it might be one of the best ones. We'll see when I take them out. Okay, folks, these empanadas have been in the oven at 375 for almost 15 minutes, but not quite. They're shiny from the egg wash. They're still warm, and I have tasted one. I have to say that I was just trying to approximate something I had many years ago, and I may have surpassed that. These are so good. I didn't know what ingredients they were using. I didn't know if they just made a plain dough or a hot water crust. I just decided to make a hot water crust. Remember, and when I rolled it out to 4.5 inches diameter, it came out very thin. These are extremely thin, and they're holding up perfectly. Remember also, I experimented with the rope versus the pinching method. 2 methods for closing the empanada. And it turns out that the pinching method is perfect. I think I'll do that for breakfast. Like I said, I ate a few already, couple of them. And it's not at all like what I was approximating, but it's so much better. Oh my God, it's crunchy. I don't know if you can hear that. And of course they're still warm. I think you always want your empanadas to be warm. I'm going to be hard pressed to find out how I can not eat them all before morning when I want other people to try it. I think I may have just invented something. And I'm also not sure that I even need cheese, because the way I made the way I sauteed the mushrooms is so flavorful. I know it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, and I'm sorry. I don't like to do that. But I'm going to have to sign off now because I have to eat this. Yum. Perfect. Shiny and perfect.